No one can deny that Sacramento Kings star guard De'Aaron Fox is struggling to start the season. And while we're not going to put blames for his struggles on any other players, could starting lineup and rotation changes potentially help him? If the Kings were to move Terence Davis out of the rotation, would Marvin Bagley be the right fit for that spot? I'm going to be joined by ESPN 1320's Kenny Caraway to talk about this, plus our frustrations with Luka Doncic, our disappointment in De'Aaron Fox, and more on today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season and all off season. If you're looking for in-depth analysis, game-by-game breakdowns, highlights, interviews with local and national experts, full coverage of your Sacramento Kings from January through December, this is the podcast for you, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I've been a Sacramento sports media member, Sacramento Kings media member for the last 7 years. This is my 8th season covering the Kings, formerly with Sports 1140 KHDK Radio in Sacramento, now with ABC 10 Television. And speaking of radio, guys, my friend, my buddy Kenny Caraway, back with me here on the Locked On Kings podcast today. Our conversation going to dominate the show. We're going to get to that in just a second because we discuss a lot of stuff, like I mentioned in that introduction. Before that, though, want to thank you for making Locked On Kings your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Appreciate your loyalty to this show. I appreciate that you either start your day or end this day, or out of all the content on the Locked On Podcast Network, maybe out of all the content available podcasts worldwide, that you choose Locked On Kings as your first listen. And I would hope that you would consider making another podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network your second listen. Maybe you're a 49ers fan. You want to listen to Locked On Niners. Maybe you're like me, a Raiders fan, Locked On Raiders. If you are a fan of the Oakland A's and are as frustrated as I am with them losing Bob Melvin, their manager, you can listen to Locked On A's. There's Locked On Giants. There's national shows. Check out and make one of the many shows on the Locked On Podcast Network your second listen every day after Locked On Kings. Appreciate your support as always, and I appreciate you tuning in. I think you're really going to enjoy my conversation with Kenny Caraway here. We dive into a ton of things. He and I see things fairly similar, but he does a good job of separating his take from my take and his thought process on everything that's going on with De'Aaron Fox, everything that could happen with rotation changes as the Kings try and figure things out. Plus, he talks about the mindset that he wants the Kings to have, even though they're 500, how that's not good enough, how they need to capitalize on these games right now. So much to get to. So without any further ado, here is my conversation with ESPN 1320's Kenny Caraway. Joining me right now, a man who never fails to share his opinion from D-Lo and KC. It's the KC, Kenny Caraway, ESPN 1320's own. You can listen to him and Damian Barling Monday through Friday on ESPN 1320. And if you're a 49ers fan, don't forget to tune in and listen to Kenny Caraway before and after every single 49ers game on your home of the Niners, ESPN 1320. KC, lots been going on with the Sacramento Kings. You could look at it from two different perspectives. You could look at it from the perspective A, which is, hey, the Kings are 500. They're 3-3, which is where I think a lot of us thought this team would be, in a position that if they're around 500 at the end of the season, that's probably good enough for there to be in the play-in. But then you can take the context of these 6 games, right, and go, they were in every single one. You could argue they should have won every single one. I want to get your opinion, your talk on this. We're going to talk about the struggles of De'Aaron Fox. I do want to talk about Luka Doncic because you and I are kind of on the same page with his watchability factor. And then we're going to talk about a couple potential Luke Walton lineup changes and if they would help or hurt the current Kings situation. But first off, my man, I know because I listened to a little bit of you with D-Lo today. I know you got some thoughts on what is going on with De'Aaron Fox right now. If you want to set the scene a little bit with how you're feeling about the Kings star who quite honestly is not playing like it.
Yeah, man, and this one kind of hurt me. It kind of hurt me because I love De'Aaron Fox, man. I love everything that he represents, the hope that he represents for this franchise and the city, the fact that he embraces staying here and trying to turn things around. I love everything about De'Aaron Fox, but I got to call a spade a spade, when I see it. And I didn't even really say too much. I didn't say, like, get him out of here or I'm done with him or nothing like that. I just referenced back to a conversation that I have with a buddy of mine who I respect his basketball acumen. We have, I feel very good, intelligent basketball conversations. And he's been saying, we've been going back and forth on this one for the past year or so. And he's been like, yo, Fox he's not it. And I'm like, no, you're bugging. Like, Fox is, he's good. Don't trip. And he's like, I'm telling you, man, it's not it, man. And we would go back and forth. And yesterday or Sunday after the Mavericks game, I texted him and I was like, look, man, I'm not conceding, saying you're right or anything like that. Still believe in him. But today's the first time where I've kind of thought, what if this doesn't happen the way we all hope it'll happen? And it was just, it was a deflating performance, 14 points, I think 4 assists, in a game that was right on the table. And on 3 different occasions so far this season, the games have been right there. And I'm a big believer that not all the time, but sometimes and a lot of the times, these other guys, they'll get you there for better or for worse, whether it's, good or bad. If they're playing great, then you guys are all go to like a 15-point win. But sometimes they'll do just enough not to get you out of the game or to be there, with 5 minutes to go in the game. And then that's when it's time for your franchise to take over. Mm-hmm. That's when it's time for your guy to be a closer. We see it so many times with Steph Curry, Dame Lillard, Kyrie when he was with the Cavs, LeBron. And I'm talking about the All-Stars. And that's where I'm expecting De'Aaron Fox to get to. We're all talking about it here in Sacramento, De'Aaron Fox being an All-Star. Now, all those people that can close it out for their teams, they're All-Stars. And on 3 different occasions, in my opinion, you got the Jazz game, the Warriors game, and this game on Sunday with the Mavericks. They were there. They were right there to be had. And De'Aaron Fox, 12 points, 17 points against the Warriors, and then 14 against the Mavs, and not much of anything going on in the fourth quarter of any of those games. It's like, man, I still believe in him, but I'm not going to lie. This is one of the first times that doubt kind of crept in my head about whether or not maybe we're expecting too much from this guy that might not be able to deliver.
And that right there is what resonates with me most, Kenny, because Sunday was a day of firsts for me too. And the way I explained it on yesterday's pod was that I'm not overly concerned. I'm not giving up on De'Aaron Fox or anything like that. I choose to look at his full body of work over a bad stretch of 6 games. But for the first time, the fears of, can he be what's next? And what I mean by that is, like, the goal for this season and the goal for all of us, and we'd be thrilled with the Kings making the postseason, whether it's through the play-in into I'm talking actual playoffs. Like, if the Kings make the playoffs, whether they're a top 6 seed, which is very unlikely unless Fox is out of his mind, or if they make it via the play-in, like that's the goal for this season. We'd all be thrilled for the Kings to avoid that playoff drought. Right. But that's step 1. Like, the Kings aren't looking at that as the end goal, that they're throwing a parade for that alone. They're looking 3-4 rungs up the ladder of that is the next step in the process to build a championship team here at Sacramento. Right. And you don't pay De'Aaron Fox a max contract if you don't believe that he can't be or won't be, if not the guy, one of the guys on a championship team. And what I've seen at the start of this season is, and what it's provided for me for the first time, are those little whispers of doubt in the back of my head of, what if he isn't that guy? What if he's not capable of that? And it's really easy to compare him to what Ja Morant is doing. We've compared Fox and Morant a ton on all sorts of different platforms, really since Ja Morant came into the league. Yeah. I had the Locked On Grizzlies host on over the offseason. We debated Fox versus Morant. I chose Fox. He chose Morant. Most people, I'd say like 55% sided with him on Morant. Now it's like 95% because Morant is showing us that he can do it. His team gets him there, and then he closes it out, which is what Fox, like you said, is expected to do. Let me ask you this, because I know you were discussing this with D'Lo today. Is it an oversimplification to say, if De'Aaron Fox was playing not at like the superstar clip where he was scoring 30, 40 points last season, not that, if he was at what his averages were last year, which was like 25, 26, 27 points, that the Kings would definitely be 4-2, probably be 5-1, and have a chance at 6-0? Is that an oversimplification in your mind?
I don't think it is. And I know, I've talked to my man D'Lo about this, and he's like, well, it's a little bit of a domino effect or something like that. Like if he's playing well, maybe the Jazz, Warriors, and Mavericks play differently on defense, or maybe they react. I get all that, but when I talk about him playing better than what he has in those 3 games, it's not taking anything away from anybody. Like, these are shots that he's shooting that are missed. You know what I'm saying? It's not like if he scores 6, then Buddy Hield's not going to make his shots, or Davion Mitchell or whatever. It's like, no, he's shooting the ball regardless of what's going on, and they're not going in. If they go in, I see a different outcome. Realistically, I say, just to be fair, one of those games turn into I'm not even going to say 5-1, 6-0. I'm going to just say one of those games should turn into a win, because they were right there for it. And De'Aaron he's supposed to be the guy that brings it all the way home. So I believe that for sure. One of those games turn into a win if he plays a little better in any one of those games.
This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. And thanks to the Great Resignation, the job market is filled with once-in-a-generation talent. So how is your organization going to put together an all-star team? Your front office needs an all-star roster. You need Indeed to help attract that talent. Indeed is a hiring partner that gets you what you really want, a short list of quality candidates as fast as possible, because you can't do it all yourself. Attract, interview, and hire, but you can do it all at Indeed. Don't struggle on your own to find quality candidates. Indeed can help you hire the right people right now. It saves you time, and of course, time is money in the business world. Indeed partners with you on every step of the hiring process, so you can find talent with the skills you need through the tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you'll get a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description, and you can even invite them to apply right away. Get started right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Again, that's a $75 credit at Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer valid through December 31st. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Locked On Kings is also brought to you by DirectTV. Does this sound familiar? You got one device that lets you catch your game live. You have another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friends log in for all the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment that you love without all the hassle, and a great way to finally get all your TV together in one place. It's called DirectTV Stream, and it brings your live TV, on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes, no need to buy another device ever again, and the best part, there's no annual contract. I cut the cord a long time ago because I was sick and tired of those annual contracts. It wasn't worth it with streaming systems. Now, DirectTV has stepped into the streaming game with DirectTV Stream, and it's better than anything out there, even Netflix, honestly, at least in my opinion. Get rid of the clutter, get rid of the confusion, get your TV together with DirectTV Stream. You can learn more at DirectTV.com. That's DirectTV.com. Compatible device is required. Content varies by package. So I want to know how you balance this, because you and I and most Kings fans, we're done with the moral victories this year. I mean, it's not about the moral victories and, hey, what can they be some year, or man, what they did today makes me excited for what they could do tomorrow. There's no more of that nonsense. It's win today or essentially you fail. And that's a very black and white way of looking at it, and maybe unfair way of looking at it. But that's the bar that the Kings and general manager Monty McNair and Luke Walton, they've put upon their shoulders. And the players have echoed that with the things that they've said to the media. So that's where the bar is. But how do you balance the teeter-totter of, on one hand, your star in De'Aaron Fox isn't delivering, and you've missed out on 3 very winnable games early in the season where you're more than likely not going to get these winnable games? Like, I don't know if you're going to get the Jazz or have a good chance against the Jazz at any point Tuesday and beyond, as well as you got them in the home opener. Same thing with the Golden State Warriors. You might never get that good of a Phoenix Suns team, or that Phoenix Suns win again, and you barely squeaked by them. And then, I mean, I don't know necessarily about the Dallas Mavericks because they didn't look that good. But balancing that with the defense and the other players are doing enough for the Kings to consistently be in every single game. And the fact that this team is 500, even without De'Aaron Fox playing at the level that we expect, like there's a positive in that. The fact that the Kings go down by 15 points early and the bench got them back in, which never would have happened last season. Right. How do you balance those pros and cons?
It's a situation for me where I try to stay in the macro, you know what I mean? And I look at the micro. They're 3-3, you know, in a very simple way. If they keep us 500 pace up for the whole season, they'll be in a playoff situation or the play-in or whatever the case may be. And that's where they want to get this year. So it's not the worst thing in the world to be 3-3. It's actually pretty impressive when you start to factor in the teams that they've had to play at the start of the season. But I just look at it as I want them to shoot for the stars. So if they miss, they land on the clouds, right? Mm-hmm. And every game that you have an opportunity to do something, like the Dallas one is a perfect example for me. You had an opportunity right there to, I don't want to say steal a game, but that was there. I keep saying it was on a platter. It was on the table for you. You got to get that. You got to get that because there's going to be some games in the back part of the season or anytime during the season where you probably should have won, but you missed free throws or you turn the ball over, whatever, you're going to lose. And if you don't have money in the bank with games like this Dallas game or the Utah game, you're going to be struggling. And that's kind of the way I look at it, where if you can get these games while you can, they're almost insurance for later on down the road because it's inevitable. You're going to have, like I said, a close game that you lose or a game where you just don't show up and you get blown out by 20. If you take the opportunities that you had earlier in the season and cash in on those won't hurt you as much as they potentially can if you leave them on the table. Now, they've done an all right job. They've done a 500 job of that right now. Like, because while they could be 5-1, 4-2, the Portland game was on the table. They took advantage of that. The Phoenix game was there. They came back and took advantage of that. The Pelicans game was a game they were supposed to. So it hasn't been all doom and gloom. But I've said it since the last season ended. There's a sense of urgency that has to come with every single game, with this roster, with this coaching staff, with this front office. Everybody needs to be on edge to a certain degree and understand that every single game and every single opportunity is extremely important. And you have to take advantage of it every time. It's a pressure cooker. And maybe these are the things, and having this mentality, maybe it burns people out. I don't know. But I know that what I don't want to hear, what you don't want to hear, the fans don't want to hear. And if I was in that locker room, if I was a player or a coach, I wouldn't want to hear, oh, it's early. We've got time. Mm-hmm. We don't have as much time as you think. We're going to be 25 games into this season at the blink of an eye. And if we keep talking about it's early, we're going to continue to miss out on opportunities.
Especially when better teams get better as the season goes on. And this is the time really to jump on them. And Kenny, you said something during the show today, and I know you've mentioned it on social media, and it's resonated with me too. The Kings, I know it's a long season, 82 games. The last thing we want to do is be in April looking back at these games at the beginning of the season going, and maybe like it's a tiebreaker situation with the Dallas Mavericks going, if only they had won that game, or if only they had beaten the Utah Jazz at home when they really had the chance, or if only, like we can pick apart every game, and super winnable games like the beginning of the season, those can add up.
Yeah, no, and this team, this franchise, they're not in a position, in my opinion, to talk about how early it is or it isn't. Maybe that's good enough for Phoenix, you know what I'm saying, or that's good enough for the Lakers. They've proven something. They have the equity to say, we can turn it around. We've done it before. We can turn this around. We'll do that. Kings don't have that equity. This season, I'm telling you, it has to be super intense. I believe it's got to be intense. There's got to be a sense of urgency every single night. And I feel like Coach Walton is coaching with that sense of urgency, and you can hear it in some of the post-game comments, even in wins. He's like, we didn't play good here. We didn't play good in this first quarter, or this fourth quarter, we didn't close it out the right way, whatever the case may be. I'm glad we got the win, but there's a lot that we can improve on. And I know it sounds crazy after 6 games to some people to be like, you know, they need to pick up the intensity, or they need to lock in, or whatever the case may be, or De'Aaron Fox needs to lock in and carry this team and all this other stuff. But that's just what it is in Sacramento right now. I don't know what else to tell you, but that's just what it is. That's what's going on right now. It is that intense. It is that pressure cooker, because we've been pretty passive around here for 15 years. We've given the benefit of the doubt for good effort for a long time. I'm not into that right now. Not this year. Not with this group.
I wasn't planning on asking this, but you brought up Luke Walton and it popped into my mind. The Dallas Mavericks started this game. They were coming off of an embarrassing loss to the Dallas Mavericks, and they started the game on Sunday. They came out of the gate hot, and everybody and their mother expected that from Dallas because they were embarrassed by 30-plus points the night before. They look at the Sacramento Kings. It didn't matter who they played. They could have played the best team in the NBA, and they were going to come out swinging because they had a point to prove. And the Kings just happened to get in the way. That being said, I know it was a matinee game. I don't use that as an excuse. The Kings were still seemingly caught off guard or surprised by it. They didn't seem prepared. The bench got them back in, but the starters didn't seem prepared. Who do you put that more on? Is that more on Luke Walton and the coaching staff to make sure they're mentally focused there, or is that on the players to recognize the situation and execute?
Matt, you know me, man. I'm putting it on the players. And that doesn't give the coaches and the coaching staff a pass or anything like that, but I just look at it as more than anything, more than a coach, and I'm not saying that you're saying this, but a coach yelling at you in the locker room before the game to get focused. There's self-accountability that you've got to have to be locked in. All these guys have seen enough NBA basketball. They've seen enough basketball to know this. We've seen enough basketball to say the Mavericks got blown out on Friday. They're going to come ready on Sunday. Me and you, we didn't need a coach to tell us that. You know what I mean? And they've been around a lot more basketball than we have. So I fully expect them coming into that game to be like, hey, they got blown out the other night. They're going to come with it. We got to be ready. And they weren't. And that's, to me, primarily on those players. And it's on the leaders of that team. Man, I know it seems like I'm picking on them. I know it seems like I don't like them. And it's the complete opposite because I love De'Aaron Fox. I really do. I love De'Aaron Fox. But that's where your leaders. Yeah. So, hey, when we're in the tunnel. Hey, you know this Dallas team's going to be ready. We got to be ready to go. We got to be ready to go from the start. And I look at Fox as being the leader because he's the best guy, but maybe he's not that guy. So if it's Harrison, Halliburton, whoever, it can't always just be Tristan because Tristan doesn't even start the game, right? Yeah. So it's got to be one of those five guys saying, look, hey, we got to be ready to go. We know what time it is, what happened on Friday. And that's where you need your leaders on court to step up and play that leadership role and have these guys prepared. And they weren't ready to go. Luckily, the bench was ready to go, and it ended up being a game that was winnable for them.
The Locked On Kings podcast today is brought to you by our friends over at Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar on the planet. And look, I love Thanksgiving. I absolutely love all the good food, all the treats, and there are plenty of them. But maybe I want a yummy dessert this Thanksgiving dinner that isn't so full of calories and sugar and is going to make me feel bad about myself. It's the perfect time for Built Bars. Built Bar is the new holiday dessert. Feast on something delicious and, more importantly, feel good about it. One slice of pie has upwards of 300 calories, and that's on the low end. Most Built Bars are only 130 calories and only 4 grams of sugar with plenty of protein. Replace the coconut cream pie with a coconut Built Bar, or go for a raspberry Built Bar instead of that raspberry pie. Lots of good flavors to replace any pie this Thanksgiving. Low calorie, low carb, low fat, high protein, covered in 100% chocolate. Built is a great option for when you're hungry. If Thanksgiving isn't coming soon enough, go for a Built Bar or 2 or 3 or 8. Just get a whole box. Share some at your family gatherings. It will make things less awkward. Maybe Aunt Betty hasn't tried a Built Bar yet, and you have to be careful because she and the rest of your family might try and steal a box while it's all said and done. They're that good. There's nothing like a Built Bar Black Friday, so mark your calendars with Black Friday coming up. There will be a huge event with all sorts of surprises and great deals for you. Like, for example, using our promo code LOCKED15 at Built.com. You can get 15% off your order right now, and that's not even a Black Friday special. You just get that right now. Locked15 for 15% off. Get yourself a box at Built Bar or at Built.com. Even with the great start, the Dallas Mavericks did not look impressive to me, and I had question marks about them coming into the season, even with Kristaps Porzingis healthy. Now he didn't play on Sunday, and who knows about his future with this Dallas Mavericks team. I'm not big believers in them. The Kings swept them last season. That's not going to happen this season, unfortunately. But you and I think, are both able to objectively watch a Dallas Mavericks game, watch Luka Doncic play, and separate the what could have been in Sacramento from what we're watching. That actually that's been easier for me to do than it has been for Damian Lillard. I'm still not over the fact that the Kings could have had Damian Lillard, but I can objectively say I'm over the Kings not having Luka Doncic. It's done. Yeah. That ship has sailed. We all know it was a disaster. But at the same time, too, some may interpret this as sour grapes, but we see pretty eye to eye on this. Luka Doncic has quickly become both of our least favorite player to watch in the NBA.
Mhm.
And it really has nothing to do with his skill set. I'm mesmerized by how he can play, how he can shoot, how he can pass, the player that he is. But there's one thing in particular, and I think fans are picking up on it, that we don't like. And Kenny, I'm going to hand it off to you. What is it about Luka Doncic that makes both of us so tired?
It's the crying and the whining constantly from tip-off. Much like you, I'm past the whole Luka Bagley thing. Like, we moved on. We got an opportunity to move on with our franchise and possibly get into the playoffs, and that's all we ever wanted. And that's a good thing. He's doing what he's doing in Dallas. I'm not worried about that whatsoever. Luka, the basketball player, the things that he can do on the basketball court, extremely, extremely impressive. Great talent. Luka, the person, I haven't seen a lot of him or interviews like that, but I'll tell you this, Matt George, I don't have no problem with him. Seems like a fine guy. Like, he seems pleasant, witty, has some jokes, whatever. He doesn't really talk bad about anybody or nothing. He seems fine as a person. Luka on the basketball court with the refs and complaining, insufferable. Absolutely insufferable. And it's constant. It is every single time down court. He either feels like he was fouled and it wasn't called, or he's crying about something on the defense, whatever. It's just the constant whining and crying and complaining that is insufferable. And I'll say this. Insufferable, excuse me. I'll say this. A lot of people, when I made a tweet talking about I don't enjoy watching him at all, they tried to lump James Harden in there. And it's ironic because I said after Luka's rookie season, and people gave me flack for it. I said, what's the difference between James Harden and Luka Doncic? I was like, there is no difference. But you people treat James Harden one way and glorify Luka Doncic. But when I mentioned it yesterday, people try to throw him in there. Harden wasn't a choir boy out there, and he's still not. I never got the vibes of just the whining and the constant complaining as much as I do with Luka Doncic. Harden complains and he hunts for fouls, but it's not as constant. It is all game long with Luka, and it's nasty. It's just nasty, man.
And it's one thing if it's like during a dead ball and the camera will catch him plenty of times after a foul call, because LeBron James does this. A lot of players, not just stars, do this where they'll go over to the ref and try and get an explanation. And Luka has a very expressive face to where you know how he's feeling, you know if he's not happy. That bothers me less than the in-game nonsense. And one play in particular, in the second quarter, Davion locks up Luka. Luka wants a foul call, doesn't get it. There's still, like, the Mavericks still have possession. The shot clock is still going down. I think the ball goes out to like Dorian Finney-Smith or someone. Yeah. He's looking around like, okay, now what do I do? And he looks to his star, who is now completely checked out of the play because he's looking at the official, wanting to make sure he gets his complaint in and gesture at the official during a live possession where you still have the ball. Like, that as a coach, that as a teammate would drive the hell out of me, even if my player had an argument. And I think it stings a little bit extra with the years of DeMarcus Cousins here in Sacramento, because Cousins whined and complained and we all got tired of it. But Cousins didn't get nearly the preferential treatment that Luka Doncic has gotten very quickly. It took Cousins 5-6 years to get a little bit of halfway decent treatment, and Luka gets the best of the best here in year 3 or 4 or whatever it is. I don't know. That, to me, that's what grinds my gears most. That's what boils my blood a little bit, is the in-game nonsense. Because if I was a Mavericks fan, it would just drive me crazy. Again, some people can call it sour grapes about the entire past with the Kings, and I'm not trying to make this let's bag on Luka Doncic instead of focusing on the fact that the Kings dropped a very winnable game. We're not taking anything away from how the Kings failed and how De'Aaron Fox failed, but that bothered me the most about this game, even more than the Kings loss.
Yeah, man, it's just not, to me, and I guess to you too, it's just not enjoyable to watch. I know the league is full of people that complain, and De'Aaron Fox complains. Everybody complains about something, right? But it's just excessive on his part. And it makes you wonder what's going to happen with him moving forward in that respect. Because I remember Kevin O'Connor of The Ringer brought it up last year, and Mark Cuban came out and I forgot, he said something about, well, Kevin O'Connor, this is ridiculous to say, but he's like, well, Kevin, or maybe Zach Lowe said it. I don't know. Either one, it was either one of those two. And Mark Cuban was like, well, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You don't watch basketball. Okay. Like, I think I watch a lot of basketball, a ton of basketball. I can say definitively, I don't watch as much as Zach Lowe or Kevin O'Connor. So if you got somebody like Mark Cuban talking about he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about and he doesn't watch basketball, when he just mentions the fact that, Luka's got to chill with that. It's kind of crazy. Who's ever going to tell Luka to chill? Doesn't seem like all the fans that responded back to me on the tweet last night, they certainly were defending it or saying, oh, you just sour grapes, you're mad because you have Bagley. Nobody's ever going to check him on this. And it's just going to continue to be an annoyance for people like ourselves.
Well, speaking of Marvin Bagley, we'll wrap up. I have two different Kings lineup changes or questions to address with you and talk about. And the first one has to do with Marvin Bagley. Terence Davis quite simply has been terrible off the Kings bench. And it's unfortunate because he was the leading scorer during preseason. We know how good he can be when he's on. Luke Walton calls him the team's second best shooter. And there is so much potential there for him to be that offensive spark while also being able to provide halfway decent defense and halfway decent playmaking, put the ball on the floor, which to Buddy Hield's credit, I think Buddy has gotten significantly better at putting the ball on the floor and dribbling out of trouble. He was smothered by the Dallas Mavericks. They had a good game plan for him. But Terence Davis as a whole has been disappointing. He's shooting less than 20% from three-point range so far this season, which just absolutely can't happen when that's your main skill coming off the bench. So, Kenny, if you're Luke Walton, do you consider moving Terence Davis out of the rotation? And if you do, is Marvin Bagley the best replacement for him if you're looking for someone to – if offense has been your struggle, is Marvin Bagley, who we know can put up offensive numbers, still massive question marks defensively, but we know he can put up numbers. Is Marvin Bagley a ideal replacement for Terence Davis in the rotation if you're moving him out? Kind of a two-part question there.
That's a good question. I would say no. I'd probably look more so to a Lewis King before Marvin Bagley, and that's not a knock on Bagley. But his spot is already filled. The minutes are already filled there between Harkless, Holmes, Tristan Thompson, Alex Len, and then times when you want to have Harrison Barnes at the 4 in the 3-guard lineup, there's no room for Marvin Bagley right now. There's just no room for what he would bring to the table. When you bring in somebody like a Lewis, we call him Louis the King on the show. That's why I always get caught up with that. When you bring a Lewis King in to replace Terence Davis, he can do a lot of those things, those wing things that you're looking to get from TD. And it's all going to come full circle here because I wouldn't move him out of the lineup just yet. I know my partner was talking on the show today about Mo Harkless and do we need better at the 4 position? And Terence Davis, is his minutes starting to dry up? Is he going to be out of the rotation? And I say none of those just yet, because the first thing that needs to improve is De'Aaron Fox's play. And once again, not trying to make it like I'm harping on the guy, but it really doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter. Those moves are small potatoes if he doesn't get it going. You know what I mean? And on the contrary, if he gets it going, all that other stuff, to me, isn't as big of a deal, isn't as important if he's starting to cook, if he's getting back to 25 a night. So that, I say all that to say, that's the least of my worries right now. Terence Davis, Mo Harkless, Marvin Bagley, all those guys. The first priority should be, how do you get De'Aaron Fox going? Because as I affectionately call him, the straw that stirs the drink, you got to get him going and get his game back up to where everybody thinks it should be.
And I'm going to ask you about a potential starting lineup change that maybe could help get De'Aaron Fox going in a second. But you talked about Marvin not being able to work his way in because his position is being filled by the Mo Harkless, Harrison Barnes, Alex Len, Tristan Thompson, Rashawn Holmes minutes. Can the same be said about Chimezie Metu then in your mind? If that spot becomes available, Chimezie can't get in as well because those guys ahead of him?
Yeah, I think so too, man. And I like Metu a lot. But I just, the thing that I worry about is and I guess you could say the same thing with Marvin Bagley. Is I'm not sure if those two guys defend well enough to crack the rotation. I think they both can put up buckets, and maybe that's something you have to look at if you're not getting the scoring from De'Aaron Fox that you hoped you were getting. But I just think right now, the way things are and having better options defensively and rebounding and on a toughness level, I think those guys lack the ability to give you what you're looking for on the defensive end. And I'd probably rather go with a Tristan or Alex Lynn to kind of hold the fort defensively and on the rebounding side.
Mo Harkless is starting at the 4, and we know he's mainly there for his defense and the wing depth that he provides. The Kings are very, very short and thin at the wing spot. 2 points combined over the last 2 games, which I understand if Mo Harkless isn't in there for his offense, and you have 4 guys who can score decently well in that starting lineup. But to me, you still need more than 2 points in 2 games from your starting 4, regardless of what he's doing on the defensive end. He's really struggling from outside. Really, almost all the Kings, with the exception of Buddy Hield and Harrison Barnes, have been struggling from 3-point range. But something that's really been apparent to me is maybe some of De'Aaron Fox's struggles have to do with a lack of spacing, because he's sharing the floor with guys who are struggling to shoot the 3. Rashawn Holmes doesn't really shoot the 3. Mo Harkless hasn't been shooting it well. When he's with Davion Mitchell hasn't been shooting it well. Tyrese Halliburton hasn't shooting it well. It seems like every time Fox puts the ball on the floor, and this would happen regardless, even if those guys were shooting it well, but every time he puts the ball on the floor, there's 2-3 defenders that converge on him every single time. So not to try, maybe this is just a Band-Aid over a wound, and not to try and put De'Aaron Fox's problems on Mo Harkless. But do you think that there's something to the Kings considering moving Harkless out of the starting lineup, replacing him maybe with a Buddy Hield or someone who does space the floor a little bit better, and see if that opens up more opportunity for Fox where he likes to get his points around the paint?
It's a possibility. I mean, that's something that has to be at least thought about if you're Luke Walton and the coaching staff. And that could be, something that plays into De'Aaron Fox's struggles, like you mentioned. I'm not dismissing that at all. When I look at Mo Harkless, though, I look at what he does out there. And I mentioned this earlier. At the very least, worst case scenario, and it's not even like he's super locked down or anything like that, but he's a reliable defensive body.
Yes.
That the worst case scenario, he's just a pro out there on the defensive end. And you have, let's just say he don't play any other time but this, and we know that's not true, but 5 minutes to start the game, 5 minutes at the beginning of the second half. That's 10 minutes where you don't have to use Davion on Booker or De'Aaron on Booker or Harrison on Luka or anything like that. That's 10 minutes to just kind of give them to get a feel for the game, to kind of get a flow for what they want to do offensively, all that other stuff. To me, that's a role. That's valuable, to say, hey, I got 10 minutes where it's not the best option, but it's not going to kill us to have Mo Harkless out there guarding Devin Booker or Luka Doncic or anything like that, or Brandon Ingram or something like that. So Harrison doesn't have a 30, 40-minute night full of having to guard this top guy, and De'Aaron doesn't have 40 minutes of having to guard this guard and Tyrese, et cetera. So right now, where we're at 6 games in, that's still valuable to me if I'm Coach Luke Walton. If he's still not giving much of anything 20 games in and De'Aaron is still struggling, well, you might have to try something, to not only get a jolt of energy into that starting lineup, but also maybe help De'Aaron Fox out a little bit. So that's something to keep an eye on for sure. But right now, I'm still riding with Mo with the 4.
That is Kenny Caraway from ESPN's ESPN 1320's D-Lo and KC. You can listen to him and Damian Barling Monday through Friday from noon to 4 o'clock. Also, like I mentioned, pre and post game for San Francisco 49ers football coverage. Casey, you're always so generous with your time, my man. I look forward to joining you and D-Lo back on your show in the near future, my man. And I can't wait to have you back on Locked On Kings very soon. See you at the arena very soon. At least King season is here, man. And in the end, even though there's struggles, even though there's concerns, this team is 3-3, considering a very difficult difficult schedule to start where we thought they easily could be in like 1-5 or 2-4 territory. So again, not trying to sell anybody moral victories, but in the end, it's not a horrible start. We're enjoying ourselves and we're both back. Glad that Kings basketball is back.
Absolutely, man. I'll take it, man. It's not perfect, but 3-3, I'll absolutely take it, and we'll work from there. So anytime you need me, Matt, I got you, man, and we love having you on every Tuesday. Matt George on D-Lo and KC.
Huge thank you to Kenny Caraway for joining me back here on Locked On Kings. Look forward to joining him and D-Lo tomorrow or every Tuesday like I do, usually around like 3 o'clock, 3:20 if you ever want to tune in. It's AM 1320 on your radio dial. If you're local in Sacramento, best place to watch is probably youtube.com/ESPN 1320. They're also on Twitch. You can download the Odyssey app and catch their show then. If you want more Kings talk in addition to Locked On Kings, don't replace Locked On Kings, but in addition to Locked On Kings, the ESPN 1320 radio station and D-Lo and KC specifically is just a fantastic show for you to tune into every single weekday. So I appreciate Kenny. He's a very busy guy. So for him to come here on Locked On Kings on such short notice is fantastic. I love him and can't wait to have him back on in the near future. If you want to respond to anything that we talked about, please do so. You can reach me on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack. You can reach Kenny on Twitter at IamKDiddy. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or if you're watching on YouTube, leave your thoughts down in the comment section down below. Appreciate your support as always. Look forward to having you back with me on tomorrow's podcast, the post-game edition after the Kings and Utah Jazz. I don't expect the Kings will have as good of a chance to win as they had in the home opener, but hey, maybe this is the breakout game from De'Aaron Fox that we have been waiting for. We'll have to wait and see, but we'll talk about that game, win or lose, no matter what. I hope you'll join me for that. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.